I hope that's okay with all of you. And I'm going to greet you the way people greet each other up here in the north, which is moin.
Right.
That means hello. You say that in all times of the day. I greet you to the session regarding soul loss. I'm going to introduce myself to you and talk a bit about what soul loss is and how you recognize it. What's the importance even of knowing about it? And then we're going to do a brief drum journey. I brought my drum to give you a taste of the power of shamanic journeying. So again, moin. I'm talking to you from my homelands, which is in Jutland at the very north of Germany. It's the land of the Vikings. You could say even my name, Wiebke, and Viking has the same root. So Wiebke means warrior or fighter, warrior really. Just a little bit about me. I have a maths degree, and in the 90s I started my corporate career, all left brain, rational, well-planned project manager. And then life happened in midlife, crisis, divorce, how life throws you to this question of what is it? What is the sense of all this? And you start looking for bigger pictures, and I started to come across different indigenous wisdom traditions. You'll see me use the word shamanic a bit less because it's been such a buzzword and I don't really like it. Everybody has their own view of it. So I started initially to train with teachers from India and the chakra system, the energy system. And I met the goddess, which was really huge because in my upbringing, Protestant, Northern Germany, there's only a male god. I didn't even realize there was a feminine part to it. So that's been a great gift to my Indian teachers, this meeting the goddess. And I then studied with wisdom teachers from the Americas, what you would call shamanic, shamanic journeying, soul loss that we're going to address later. And the great gift here really was to realize everything is of spirit, everything holds a soul, everything. Be it a stone, and I can talk to the stone, be it a tree, and I can commune with a tree. Everything is a being, really. There is nothing inanimate. And I came to ask myself, so I'm studying all these indigenous wisdom traditions. What is my own indigenous tradition? Like in Europe, they've done a pretty good job at eradicating that. So if you're in England, I think that the Celts are still pretty present. And up in north, who's up north? Well, it's Thor and Odin and Thor. So it's really the Norse mythology, the Nordic tradition. And you find the worldview of that wisdom is very similar. You have Sami drums as you have American drumming and drum journey. You do Ute Seta, which means vision quest. So you sit outside on your land for a certain number of days alone. The basic concepts are the same. So also in the Norse tradition, you have different aspects of soul as you have in the America traditions, which is the topic today really is soul loss. Why would I even talk about it at this conference of truth and reconciliation? It is such a powerful healing if you get to experience it with a well-trained practitioner. You get to integrate parts of yourself you didn't even know you had lost. So anything that you try to do in therapy, you just talk about it, it doesn't reach that depth, which is why I want to talk to you about it. Soul. So for me, in my worldview, we do have the physical body, and then there's the soul that inhabits my body, right? Usually they are, when you come in, they are, the soul fills the body, so to speak. And we're not going to get into past lives here. But then what happens is that you can go through trauma or shock or any kind of negative experience that will cause your soul to leave the body, like a car accident. You can either freeze and you stop moving, or you, like the soul just leaves the body. Everybody has their own survival mechanism. The point is that the physical part and the soul part get separated, and when the danger is over, yes, it comes back, but sometimes it doesn't come back completely. Sometimes a piece of yourself remains in this other world that the soul came to. A picture that brings it to me really clearly is, imagine if you lick ice and your tongue gets stuck on the ice cream. Now imagine you you have this frozen piece of yourself that doesn't come back to your aliveness. What can that mean? That can mean that you don't access your full power or your full joy. You don't live completely because part of you hangs in the dangle somewhere else and you don't even realize it. I want to share some examples with you to make it clearer how you can even recognize that that this has happened to you, or that this might be a way to dive into with a practitioner. The simple fact that you're here is already an indicator, really. So one example from my own life was when I moved from Italy to Munich some 12 years ago, and after initially settling in well, I fell into a kind of depression. I felt very lonely and abandoned, and with all the tricks and tools and everything I knew, I just couldn't pull myself out of that utter loneliness. And I was lucky to have a naturopath who said, "So, have you been here before?" Because she had this inkling that I'd been there before in that place. And in fact, I remembered when I was 6 years old, my parents sent me for 6 weeks, 5 weeks, on a kind of curative vacation. So 6-year-old for a longer time away from home. And I remembered how lonely I felt and the desperation of not knowing anybody and not being able to cope at 6 years old with that situation. So I went to the place because it was really around the corner of where I lived in Munich. And in my inner vision, I could see this little girl still sitting there hugging her teddy bear. And she was there waiting for me to bring her home. And after that, it was like, now I'm here. Um, I can live now, and I make friends, and this loneliness was gone. Was really still related to that small part of me that got stuck when I was in the home at 6 years old. Another example, a friend told me of her experience at an airport. Very capable woman, professional woman, runs her house, her family. Everything is well planned out, and she arrives at that airport. Flight's delayed, and or one flight is cancelled, and they need to pick a new flight. And suddenly she goes into panic, can't function anymore. And it's like it's an airport. It's not a big deal. She had her 3 kids with her, and the kids managed, but she was frozen in panic. She couldn't function. And that is really one indicator of soul loss, when you have a situation that you would normally be able to handle without problem, you can't. You just, for some reason, you react out of the ordinary. So when she told me about this, I got her permission to journey and see what was going on. And in fact, I got the picture of, again, a little girl sitting at a train station, all alone in a foreign country, language she doesn't understand, and she was just devastated. So there was, again, this little person who was lost, and this memory of being lost was lodged in her, or soul loss means there was a piece of her that remained in that fear, and living the same situation as an adult suddenly got triggered, which for her was the chance to realize and to reintegrate her. In my description, I also talked about business. So there are examples also where you can use soul loss in a business practice. A client of mine was setting up business with a partner. So there was two of them. It was clear who did what. They rented a space together. One of them would do the entrance part, the workshop part. The other was more for the private clients. And then they needed to talk money. And she couldn't. She got so angry. She got so angry. And they couldn't find an agreement. And she overreacted out of the ordinary. She got really mad at that business partner. And she asked me to have a look at it. And a story came up of her mother having set up business with a business partner and failed. They mismanaged their money. So there was again this, it seems I'm only talking about small girls today. Anyway, she was I think in her early teens, and was so impressed by the mother losing the business over money questions with a friend. And here's her life, money questions with a friend, business, same thing. And again, journeying to retrieve that part of her. Sometimes it helps already to talk about that situation, to bring it back partly, and some rituals and some welcoming to really hold that part at home with you, because the reason that they left, there was a reason, so they need to be made home, welcome, really. And my last example is around really business. So one thing is me as a person and my soul leaving and not returning. Also, business has a soul. So it's like a group of people, so to speak, and they together have their own energy field, and they hold the business holds a consciousness, and the business can lose part of its soul. So I had this client who contacted me because they were having really issues with their employees. High sick rate, people were sick all the time, and they were leaving. Very high turnover, and they couldn't manage to hold them. What do we do? What do we do? What's wrong? And they asked me to look into it. So apart from talking to people and identifying, they all said, oh, up to 3 years ago, it was fine. Up to 3 years ago, it was fine. And when did the problem start? Oh, about 3 years ago. So what happened 3 years ago? They demolished the main building. It's like the body of the business was demolished, and then they built a nice new house. Yeah, that was the house, but the spirit of the business hadn't fully come back in. And it was, so how do we do that? How can we remediate this, or how can we invite the spirit of the business back in so that the entire organization starts to flow and function again? And I did my part of, say, a shamanic ceremony, and they did their part of putting in the old furniture that was there in the old house. They put it back in also into this new building. And there were pieces where the walls touched between the old and the new buildings. And it was like, stand there, touch the old, touch the new, and just imagine how the being of the business flows back into this new building. And in fact, it seems easy now talking about it in a couple of minutes. It was a process that lasted more than half a year to find out what it is and to identify what to do. And then even the doing itself was a process. So first you recommend the furniture and see how it feels, and then you I did this with the walls several times, and eventually the client comes back and says, I don't know what you did, but we're hiring good people. So, yeah. So that's my introduction to you about soul loss. And I wanted to open this up now for questions. If you have any clarification or questions around it that you'd like to do before we go on a guided journey to Have you tasted the power of the shamanic work? So if there's
I
any,
have a question.
yes, please.
My name is Aparna. I did one with you last year. It was absolutely amazing. So I just want to understand what exactly are we trying to, I've heard everything that you said, but what are we trying to achieve here through this process? That's what I want to understand.
I want to introduce the concept so that you know about it. Thank you for the question, really. And we are going to go on the journey to. I find it difficult to explain the power of shamanic working because you only really get it when you do it. Because the way I describe these things, it could be done also in a therapeutic setting. It could be done in like talking therapy. And it's not the same thing. It looks the same from the outside, but for the client, it feels very different. Just because you understand that you were afraid at 6 years old doesn't mean that the fear goes away. So my aim is really to introduce the process and have you have a taste of it, like the journey we did last year.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question.
Hello.
Hi, Stefanie.
Hi. I was there also last year. Thanks
Thanks.
for your sharing. I'm just a bit surprised because what I heard you express as soul loss, I would express it as wounded. Wounded, I don't know if it's wounded soul or wounded essence, but I felt loss would be much more than that. That's maybe my imagination, but I felt it was about really like a fragmentation and a separation. There I felt it was more about wounding, healing, reintegrating.
I think it's there are different levels. It can be just a piece. It can also be more, and it can if it's a lot of fragments. It would just need an ongoing process. It is a type of wounding, of course, and it's the shamanic retrieval is one method.
But is there different degrees? Like there is like a fragmentation and separation, or there's just wounding and it's just kind of, you said, I think the word frozen. And is that
Depends on
maybe,
it depends on the client. I think if you're completely kind of lost, it didn't return, then it's hard to even live a good life.
yeah, but I wouldn't have thought I could, it could be used the word soul loss to describe a part that is wounded and that is needs healing and reintegration.
I think
I
it's
never.
a matter of severity, as with everything. It's a severity.
Okay,
Thank you for the question.
thank you.
I just have one more question before we start. Now, are we trying to revisit or identify our wounds of our many, many lives and then just recognize and be aware of them? Or just by being aware, do we heal them?
Awareness is not enough. It's awareness is, if you want, the first thing to go and talk to a practitioner. And that's what I try to point out with the examples that when you react out of the ordinary, really, out of the ordinary, when your reaction is not in line with the severity of the situation, that's for me is always a trigger point to say there might be something more serious happening. Does that answer your question?
No, yeah, to an extent it does. You said identifying awareness is not really what it is, but by this practice, are we trying to heal it? Is my second part of the question.
Yeah, yes. So that's really what happens when you go with a when you're trained on it as a shamanic practitioner, you do call that piece back in. And it's not a mental thing. It happens on an energetic level. which is difficult to express in words. It's like
Yes, I understand that. Yeah.
it's like
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
you want to describe honey, you can describe honey as long as you want, but you really understand it when you've tasted it. Right?
I
Yes.
get it. I get it. It also may be possible that one needs many times of doing this to be able to, just this maybe looked at it as like, let's call it like every July we try to remind ourselves that we need to heal by doing these sessions, but it may need many more sessions.
It may need many sessions. And
Thank you.
I find that once you start, I've seen you, Rahina, I just want to answer. I find that once you kind of open your eyes and you start to consciously walk in your life, new things pop up, right? So you heal a part and you're okay for a while, and then something else turns up, and this is not bad. It's just your path of learning and of integrating to become a more whole person. And this is not the only practice, and this is not the only way to treat something. Rahina.
Is there a
Yes.
difference
Thank you so
between soul loss of a person and soul loss of a business?
Say that again, please.
Is there a difference between soul loss of a person and soul loss of a business?
That's an interesting question. It's like a different level. So if I only look at the entity, so the person entity or the business entity, it seems similar because an entity loses a piece, right? At the same time, a business is made up of more components. So this client of mine, they have 100 employees. Those employees did feel the impact. There was just a great unrest. They couldn't function really well. There was a great unrest in all the people. So from that point of view, there's a difference.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
In a way, I think each of the employees carried a little bit of it. Do you have any more questions? Because then I would pick up my drum. I may introduce my drum. And we are going to journey to your personal sacred space in nature and ask a younger version of you to come forward with an information that you need to know. And I'm going to switch.
Just this life, or it could be any life.
Pardon?
Just this life or any life.
Okay. So you just sit in your space. If you need to close the door, make sure that you're not interrupted while I drum. I hope you can still hear me. This microphone is better for the drum. And you just close your eyes and you follow my drum and my voice. Feel yourself in your chair where you're sitting. Close your eyes and just memorize, this is my chair. Now you're stepping out in non-ordinary reality and go to your beautiful place in nature. hands. You feel the air, you taste the air. Just look around at the beauty of it. And as you're sitting there, you're inviting in a young version of you. There is a little one who has a message for you today. You listen. She may show you a picture, share a song. What you need to hear right today. As the young person shares her story or finishes to share, you hug each other. And all the knowing and all the love is exchanged. And brought to peace. You salute each other. The little one happily skips away. You get up and relax, look around. And slowly return to your room. To your chair. feel your feet on the ground. Rub your hands. And with one deep breath, you're back here. See you again next year maybe, or I have another talk on Saturday about the mother line. So today was soul loss. Mother line is something very dear to my heart, this relationship to our mothers. And I have two my daughters, and looking at my mom, knowing she's a daughter. So there's a whole elaboration that'll happen on Saturday. And it's going to be similar to today, my sharing and then a journey. So you're welcome to join. I will send the recording to you and wish you a lot of fun in the remainder of this wonderful conference.